Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm your host, Tanya Allen. It's time for our current events panel today. We have a whole plethora of topics to tackle. We'll start with the expanding federal bureaucracy. That's correct. Over 16,000 jobs have been added in the past year. We'll discuss the 24/7 parental rights protest that's happening in British Columbia opposing gender ideology. And then there's the reaction to Lululemon's founder Chip Wilson's comments, which has run afoul with diversity and inclusion advocates. And then we're going to also cover Alberta's population boom and what that province is doing to attract new workers. And some, of course, vigilante justice in Fort Langley. Is that a good thing? Well, we're going to unpack it all right here. And joining me now to get through these topics are Mike Patton and Brock Stephenson, both political commentators. Brock, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a heavy load, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about the federal workforce. You both sort of lean conservative-ish. Is the workforce too bloated? We'll start with you, Brock.
The federal government's added 16,000 last year, 8,000 in recent months. I think the real challenge is the private sector isn't creating jobs fast enough, and the government's stepping in to fill the void. And with Justin Trudeau in office, there seems to be no limit on hiring government employees and consultants. So we can expect more of the same in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, the number seems very huge. 16,000 in a year. The capital region itself, that's the Ottawa and surrounding area, over 8,000. Granted, obviously, a lot of the headquarters of a lot of these ministries are based there, so that makes sense. But that's 10% more than last year. Mike, is something amiss here?
Well, it seems like Oprah Winfrey has become president of the Treasury Board. There's a job for you, there's a job for you, there's jobs for everybody. The truth is the federal government is really bloated. This really is a side effect of COVID. During COVID, they went on a hiring spree for a whole host of reasons, not simply because they needed more employees, but as an economic buffer. But things have gotten out of control, and even liberals in Ottawa are starting to get nervous with the cost of running this enormous bureaucracy.
Okay, so Mike, then why is the government doing this? If their own party is getting concerned with how bloated things are getting, shall we say, uh, doesn't that look bad for, the upcoming election? We don't know when it's going to happen, but say in the next couple of years?
Well, it does outside of Ottawa, but you need to remember that pretty much with the exception of Pierre, all the federal government MPs for the city of Ottawa and the region are liberals, and they are putting a fair bit of pressure on the federal government to keep the hiring going. Keep the gravy train running because it benefits their electoral chances.
My goodness. Well, Brock, what can be done? So say the opposition says, no, we want to put brakes on this. This is not right. Rather than just constantly hurling criticism, is there anything actually practical that can be done? I was always under the impression is that once you sort of expand something, it's hard to claw it back.
There's nothing more permanent than a pilot project in the government. I think that this job growth is a good example of something that was possibly well-intentioned that's gone out of control. We've seen this growth over the last 3 or 4 years, and it continues. And I don't think there's a way it gets clawed back until there's a change in government. And even then, after there's a change in government, it is a very slow process to stop the hiring, bring in a hiring freeze, eliminate positions, don't replace retirements. Stephen Harper attempted this in his final years in office after the Great Recession, and it was a struggle every step of the way.
Yes, again, people don't like having things taken away or clawed back once they're given. But it all comes down to the taxpayer. They're the one paying for these things. Let's switch gears for a second and let's talk about what's going on at Lululemon. And I'll let you start this on Brock because you're from British Columbia. It sounds like their founder has got himself in hot water again. What happened?
So Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, the primarily women's athletic brand, said the quiet part out loud. He criticized diversity, equality, and inclusion policies as being bad for his company and bad for business in general. And I think he struck the right note. You see in Harvard recently, their president had to resign over a series of scandals, including DEI being exploited by groups that are trying to politicize it from the left. And I think Chip Wilson sort of got with the moment and commented and got in a little trouble with Lululemon, but I think he'll turn out just fine. He's done well so far.
Okay, I'm going to let you get on that in just a moment, Mike, because we've got to go to commercial. But just to be clear, the comment that made everybody fired up is when he said he doesn't want certain customers or it's not for certain customers. We're going to pick up this in just a few moments. Please stick around.